On a quiet September morning in 2001, before the world changed forever, a mystery began unfolding in New York City, one that still refuses to settle, refuses to offer answers, and refuses to fade from the memories of those who knew her. This is the story of Sneha Ann Phillip, a brilliant young doctor whose disappearance became one of the most haunting and controversial cases connected to the days surrounding the 9/11 attacks. And before we dive into the confusing twists, conflicting testimonies, and strange clues that surround her final hours, remember this: some mysteries are born not from what we know, but from what we can never confirm. Sneha's story is one of those mysteries. Sneha Ann Phillip was 31 years old, a talented physician, deeply loved by her family, and adored by her husband, Ron Lieberman. She had moved to New York full of ambition, ready to build a life in medicine, love, and independence. Her life was fast-paced, intense, and sometimes chaotic, typical of a young doctor living in Manhattan. She was intelligent, empathetic, and stubborn in her own way, never afraid to speak her mind or stand her ground. Friends described her as warm, charismatic, and adventurous, a person whose laughter filled rooms and whose kindness often extended to strangers. But beneath her bright personality, there were complications, tensions at work, stress from the hospital environment, and disagreements about her lifestyle. Like many young professionals, Sneha was navigating the fine line between responsibility and freedom. Some believed she was overwhelmed. Others believed she was simply trying to enjoy her life before settling into a career that demanded every second of her time and energy. All of these pieces matter because they became the foundation of every theory that followed her disappearance. It was September 10, 2001, one day before the attacks that would shake the world. That morning, Sneha had a court hearing regarding an internal issue at her hospital. She had been accused of being late to her shifts and having problems with professionalism, allegations she strongly denied. She insisted she was being targeted by a coworker. Her family believed her. The hearing ended without resolution, leaving Sneha frustrated and emotionally drained. After leaving the courthouse, she walked through the city, eventually reaching the apartment she shared with her husband. That afternoon, she and Ron had a small disagreement, nothing dramatic, just the normal friction that happens when two stressed people share a life in a demanding city. Ron left for work the following morning, not knowing it would be the last time he'd see his wife. On the evening of September 10, Sneha left the apartment and headed toward a department store near the World Trade Center. Surveillance footage captured her browsing and purchasing several items: lingerie, clothing, makeup, and a pair of shoes. She looked calm, composed, and completely in control. There was no sign of fear, no sign of distress. She carried her bags out of the store and disappeared into the night. This was the last confirmed sighting of her alive. What happened next has remained shrouded in confusion, speculation, and tragedy. Ron returned home early on the morning of September 11, expecting to find Sneha asleep or preparing for her day. Instead, the apartment was empty. The new shopping bags were inside, they had been dropped off sometime after her mall visit. But Sneha herself was nowhere. Her cell phone was missing. Her keys were gone. Her medical badge was gone. But her contact lenses were still inside, meaning she left the apartment wearing glasses, something she almost never did. Ron tried to reach her throughout the morning, calling again and again. No answer. No message. No sign. Then, at 8:46 a.m., the world fractured as the first plane struck the North Tower of the World Trade Center. Chaos exploded through the city. Dust, fire, panic, and confusion swept through Lower Manhattan. Thousands ran from the scene. Some ran toward it. And in that moment of unimaginable disaster, Sneha's disappearance took on an entirely new shape. Ron believed that Sneha, being a doctor, acted on instinct. He believed she had seen the smoke, heard the explosion, or simply felt the city shift, and rushed toward the towers to help. He insisted that she was the type of person who would never hesitate to run toward danger if someone needed her. To him, the simplest explanation was also the most painful: Sneha had died trying to save lives. He told investigators that Sneha often talked about wanting to help people, that she wasn't the type to stay home during a crisis. She was passionate, compassionate, and brave. It made sense to him, and to many others, that she went to the towers and never returned. But investigators weren't so sure. There were no witness accounts of her presence at Ground Zero. No confirmed hospital reports. No medical facility listed her involvement. No DNA was recovered from the rubble that matched her. The absence of evidence didn't prove she wasn't there, but it left the case trapped in uncertainty. What made things more complicated were the conflicting details about her life leading up to her disappearance. Some coworkers claimed Sneha had been struggling emotionally. Some hinted at late nights out, drinking with friends, and a lifestyle that worried Ron. Her family denied these claims, insisting she was stable, responsible, and simply social. What was the truth? It depended on who was speaking. Every piece of Sneha's personality was dissected, analyzed, and twisted into a theory. If she had been stressed, maybe she had wandered off intentionally. If she was independent, maybe she left to clear her mind. If she was upset about her job hearing, maybe she needed space. If she enjoyed the nightlife, maybe she had stayed with someone she knew. If she was a doctor, maybe she ran toward the collapsing towers. Theories multiplied, each one pulling the case in a different direction. Her credit card activity from the department store was the last known evidence of her movements. After that, her phone never pinged. Her bank account remained untouched. No taxis reported picking up someone who matched her description. The city was in chaos, millions of people trying to survive, escape, or understand what had happened. In that chaos, one missing woman was nearly impossible to track. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months, hope into desperation. Ron refused to give up. He filed missing person reports, contacted every hospital, visited shelters, and spoke to rescue volunteers. He searched tirelessly, convinced his wife was among the thousands of unnamed victims who had been lost in the towers. But each lead either faded or contradicted another. Her family supported Ron's belief, they knew Sneha's heart. They knew she would run toward the disaster, not away from it. They believed she had died a hero, even if no official record proved it. But investigators pushed back. They suspected she might have met with someone after leaving the apartment. They questioned her lifestyle. They questioned her mindset. They even questioned her marriage. The case shifted from missing person to personal scrutiny, and every detail became a battleground of interpretation. In 2004, the medical examiner made a ruling that shocked many. He concluded that Sneha likely died in the collapse of the Twin Towers. It was one of the few missing person cases officially linked to 9/11 without physical evidence. Ron felt vindicated. Her family felt relief, finally able to mourn with some sense of closure. But the ruling didn't stop the questions. Some investigators insisted there wasn't enough evidence to confirm she was there. Some critics argued that her disappearance had too many inconsistencies to be attributed solely to the attacks. Others believed a tragic accident or foul play occurred on the night of September 10, and the timing with 9/11 simply hid the truth beneath a larger catastrophe. Her case became a story overshadowed by one of the darkest days in history. But through time, it gained attention again, not as a footnote to the tragedy, but as a mystery shaped by it. A mystery where truth, tragedy, coincidence, and confusion merge so tightly that they can never be fully separated. Sneha's family remembers her as a bright, loving woman, someone who cared deeply for her patients, her loved ones, and her community. They believe her final act was one of courage. They believe she ran into danger, knowing the cost. They believe her disappearance isn't a mystery, but a sacrifice. Others see her story differently, one of a young woman struggling with pressures and expectations, possibly caught in circumstances that had nothing to do with the towers. A story of missed signals, lost evidence, and a city drowning in chaos where one missing voice was too easily swallowed. Perhaps the hardest part of Sneha's case is the lack of finality. There is no confirmed timeline, no proof of her last steps, no eyewitnesses, no recovered body, no conclusive moment that says, this is what happened. Her story remains suspended in uncertainty, and maybe that uncertainty is why her name still lingers more than 2 decades later. Because in her story, we see the fragility of life, the power of circumstance, and the painful truth that some answers remain forever out of reach. To this day, no one knows where Sneha went after leaving the department store. No one knows whether she spent the night with someone, walked the streets alone, or waited for morning. No one knows if she saw the first tower struck, or if she was already nearby. No one knows whether she died as a hero or vanished long before tragedy unfolded. Her case is a reminder that even in a world filled with cameras, technology, and constant connection, people can still disappear without a trace. They can vanish in crowds, in chaos, or in moments no one expects. And sometimes, the world is too busy breaking to stop and notice a single missing person. But her story continues, not because the mystery is solved, but because it isn't. And because somewhere, in the space between what we know and what we can never confirm, her truth remains waiting to be found.